Cedric Coward is the biggest late riser in this draft. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. Cedric Coward only played 6 games at Washington State this season due to a shoulder injury, but the 21-year-old wing's stock has shot up the most of any prospect during the pre-draft process. Coward projects as an extremely rangy wing with a picture-perfect jump shot, signs of self-creation and playmaking, very reliable spot-up shooting, and solid defensive production across wings and guards. He measured in with a ridiculous +9 wingspan, so Cedric more than looks the part of an NBA wing. He averaged about 18, 7, and 4 with 2.5 stocks for Washington State this year, where he transferred to after 2 seasons at Eastern Washington. Prior to that, Coward was a Division III player. He'd actually transferred again and committed to Duke in April, but he's gone all in on this draft. This speaks to how much Coward has developed, and the hope is that he can keep fleshing out his on-ball game while getting away from the post and having a safe off-ball and defensive floor to fall back on. A high-end two-way outcome for Coward hinges on further developments to his handle, pull-up shooting, and playmaking off the dribble. These have already happened season to season, and NBA teams must feel like more progress has taken place if Coward has bypassed Duke. The former Washington State prospect reminds me of Mikal Bridges when the latter was drafted into the NBA. At his best, Coward is getting to his mid-range pull-up out of 2 or 3 dribbles. Cedric uses his body to create space into a step back, and overall, I think that his jumper's high release point and repeatability means that he won't need a super advanced handle. Coward's shot is up and down, compact, with his shoulders square to the rim, although his balance can still improve sometimes. Coward is capable of playing off 2 feet, which in college was a good counter to the lack of spacing that he sometimes encountered. The signs on tape are encouraging, and then his numbers shooting off the bounce are alright, but on a very small sample size. Still, I'm focusing on that the 21-year-old has kept growing year upon year, and I think that drafting Coward high means that you expect to keep getting juice in this area, even if Coward does have other tools to rely on. Cedric's numbers at the rim over his last 38 games are amazing. Real quick, the reason why I'm using that figure is because Coward only played 6 games at Washington State, so I'm looping in his 32 games as a junior at Eastern Washington. Of Coward's last 151 shots at the basket, he finished about 75%, so I can't be too nitpicky. Overall, Coward is a bastion of efficiency. Cedric has interesting body control with how he slithers around the floor and extends his long limbs past defenders. He plays with rangy crossovers to get downhill, playing off 2 feet, and using the glass to finish. Looking towards the future, Cedric can still operate with more physicality. Usually, he prefers to use his length to avoid contact, and he needed to get to the free throw line more often before this season. Coward will also need to keep tightening his handle since it's still somewhat loose sometimes. Plus, he has to become more comfortable using his left hand. The hope is that Cedric can maximize his upside on the ball, which evidently includes as a slasher. Another area where there isn't too much to pick apart is Coward's spot-up shooting. Yet again, the numbers are incredibly efficient, with the eye test backing that Coward will be a good shooter. He has impeccable mechanics, which over the last 2 seasons have translated into Cedric making 41% of his 135 catch-and-shoot threes. Last year, Cedric got more looks out of handoffs and movement. Few defenders can match his high release point, and he can drill shots from 2 or from 3 in these circumstances. I consider Coward to largely be a stationary shooter right now, but he has flashed the chops to become more than that. I don't have too many concerns about Coward's 3, but I'll be keeping a distant eye on the difference between his unguarded and guarded shots. I'm not worried, but it stood out slightly, and Cedric won't have as much time or space to shoot in the NBA. Still, I feel very comfortable projecting Coward's floor to at least be a valuable off-ball wing in the 3-and-D mold. Coward is a very scalable prospect next to more ball-dominant players, which is why I think that a lot of teams are increasingly interested in him leading up to the draft. I want to see more of how Coward attacks off the catch. Cedric's process is mixed with avoidable turnovers here and there, but also bright spots through drives and pull-ups. The biggest thing, in my opinion, is that Coward will have to put the ball on the floor out of spot-ups more often in the NBA than he has until now. Defenses are going to force him to make decisions besides shooting, which he hasn't really done too much of. Coward only had 11 drives out of spot-ups last season and 5 this season, so I feel like the jury is still out. This is going to be important as a whole, and more specifically, regarding Cedric's off-ball floor. On that note, Coward is a solid rebounder at around 6'6" in shoes. Over the last 2 seasons, he's averaged about 7 boards a game with 1 or 2 contributions on the offensive glass. Coward's length and twitch are more important than his height. They let him stay productive off of misses and collect rebounds that fall outside of his area. Then, off the ball, Coward should be used, in my opinion, as a cutter like he was at Eastern Washington. It would have been interesting next season to watch Coward at Duke surrounded by the gravity of Cameron Boozer, Isaiah Evans, and others. As a cutter, Coward can combine his at-rim conversion with his athleticism to effective results. This, along with how he can come off of handoffs, mitigates what he has not shown attacking off the catch. Once again, I'll repeat here how scalable Cedric is and how he can fit next to NBA superstars. Passing is Coward's most underrated skill, although I think it will take an adjustment to get the most out of his playmaking. Right now, Cedric is most comfortable making passes out of the post. In general, in the NCAA, he played with his back to the basket far too much compared to the reps that he'll likely see in the NBA. Coward definitely makes nice reads from the block with skip passes that create threes, accurate drop-offs to generate shots at the rim, or timely sprays out to the perimeter. However, both of his teams in college gave him a lot of time in the post. That's important context because they would clear out one side of the floor for Coward to take a few seconds off the clock, go to work, and eventually make the read. That won't be there in the NBA. Cedric also got doubled or sought attention in the post in a way that similarly will not exist. At the college level, he'd almost instantly have an extra defender's attention upon getting the ball. In the NBA though, I think that Coward's passes will either come starting on the perimeter and driving in, perhaps using a ball screen, or connecting off the catch, which, as I said earlier, Coward needs to improve at. Cedric has shown real flashes in the pick and roll. Most came at Eastern Washington, but then again, he only played 6 games this season. Last year, Coward was the primary initiator fairly often, which involved handling in pick and rolls. He can make some strong side reads using a ball screen where he displays his handle's growth, but the 21-year-old needs to keep making improvement in order to access his full range of passing. Coward's reads are solid, but nothing more, and what stands out to me the most is how he can struggle with his second dribble out of the pick and roll. Often, this might mean that Coward kills his handle too early. Being the tertiary ball handler on a decent team's starting lineup seems like a fair median outcome for him. I will add, however, that maybe just being in the NBA will showcase more of Coward's playmaking. His spacing in college wasn't that ideal in my opinion, and his aggression level could have been taken up a notch. There were possessions when Coward handled the ball, didn't create a discernible advantage, and effectively just kind of killed the play. Also, Coward's passing could sometimes simply be used to deliver entries into the post for others. Overall, what I'm saying is that he's shown enough lecture and execution for me to be interested, but his passing reads are going to have to come from other spots. In the best scenario, Coward will be executing in the pick and roll in some capacity, but otherwise, and maybe more realistically, in more connective spots like hit-aheads in the open court, extra passes while spotting up, and reads of that nature. Regardless though, this will come with moving away from the post, which hopefully reduces his turnovers too. Coward had a 0.9 assist-to-turnover ratio for the last 2 seasons, which is pretty improvable both as an off-ball wing and as an on-ball decision-maker. The on-court context I mentioned earlier is responsible for some of these turnovers. Most of all, however, I think it's Coward's handle. His passing reads are generally okay or safe, but his reads as a slasher need to improve. Cedric's handle is loose, like I said earlier. He can kill it too early, which I touched on with his passing. And then, like with his finishing, Coward's left hand has limitations still. I'm decently high on Cedric Coward's defensive projection, but I don't think that he's some sort of amazing stopper right now. That said, I think there's a relatively easy avenue towards getting there if Coward's offensive responsibilities narrow down, and if he's also asked to take on an even bigger slice of the pie on defense. It's impossible to discuss Cedric on this end without mentioning his +9 wingspan, which gives him great positional versatility and margin for recovery. This season at Washington State, Coward averaged 2.5 stocks per game, which falls in line with an average of 2 stocks over his last 38 contests. That figure also ropes in Cedric's last season at Eastern Washington. I prefer Coward getting blocks over steals. He's an above-the-rim athlete with legit ground coverage and that immense go-go gadget length that I've kept mentioning. Coward moves really well in space, like a prototypical NBA wing. He's alert and engaged off the ball, carrying out his team's scheme diligently, and also chipping in with those more disruptive two-way plays. Cedric doesn't fall victim to ball watching, and he plays with steady discipline on this end of the floor, which is exactly what you want from a 21-year-old who would have been going into his 5th college season. In the NBA, I expect Coward to continue adding value as an occasional help side rim protector while also making some plays in the passing lanes. It'll be interesting to track which position Cedric's off-ball usage primarily comes from, since I think that he can probably play 2 through 4 long-term. For now, the 3 is probably Coward's best position, although I could see him getting minutes at the 2 in the short to medium term. Yet again, Cedric is scalable to a lot of different lineups and rosters, and he gives teams tangible optionality, which in turn increases his value. Looking to the NBA, I feel like Coward's reads off the ball are generally correct, but not always on time. I'd love to get some more thoughts on why this might be, because Coward is mostly in the right spots. However, it seems to me like his first jump is only good, not great, which also goes for his hand placement. I'm encouraged by the reads that Cedric makes, but there's room for more production. This shows me that the potential is definitely there, though everything gets faster in the NBA as well. Coward's on-ball defensive upside is very high too, although I slightly prefer him off the ball at this juncture. Coward has the foot speed and length to wall off ball handlers across different positions. He'll genuinely deter or reject drives, and I expect Cedric to eventually get point of attack possessions once he's in the NBA. He'll be really switchy in a high-end outcome. He'll be defending some of the NBA's most dangerous wings, but he'll be checking 1 through 4. Even in a lower case scenario, I think that he'll eat up minutes on these wings, which gives Coward a safe defensive floor. He can definitely get stops on this end, but I don't want to overstate where Coward is at either. For me, the 21-year-old is a good, not great, defender. On top of his off-ball improvements, Coward's on-ball defense is still inconsistent. He can play upright with improvable balance, and I think that he doesn't always make it hard for the attacker to get into the lane. Cedric gives up ground to stronger 3s and 4s, and he can get turned or give up the blow-by to smaller ball handlers. In my opinion, Coward's tools mean that he should be making life hard for his rivals on every possession. That's not the case just yet, but I think reasonably it could be.